So we're going to start off with what we call a Shimmy Pop. We kind of open and close with that. Shimmy Pop, we have our hands in prayer, and we're going to breathe in as hands go up, out, down as they meet in the bottom. Breathe in as they go up to prayer, and out as you give a little half bow. Okay. And do a little light yoga to get comfortable in our seats. So we'll breathe in, hands out to the sides. You're going to start with the right hand. Breathe out. We're going to go over to one side. In center. Out the other side. In center. Out, twist. In center. Out, twist. You're going to bring your hands behind your back, and you're going to clasp your hands, clasp your fingers. You're going to breathe in as you arch back. Lean forward. In, up. Out. You're going to switch your grip, which means the other thumb is going to go on top. So you switch your grip. Breathe in as you arch back. Out, forward. In, up. Out, hands on the knees. We're going to do what's called Sufi Grind. We're going to rotate from the hips, forward and back. We're going to do it 3 times in one direction. You can sync your breath with it if you like. You can breathe in as you rotate forward, out as you rotate back. Let's just do it a couple more times this side. Normally we just do 3, I was explaining. And we're going to do 3 times in the opposite direction. I like the name, Sufi Grind. I'm not sure why they call it that. Someone just told me that. I like the name. We're going to change legs. Remember, you always create balance. Other leg in front or on top or whatever's comfortable. We're going to do that same sequence. We breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. Hands behind the back, clasp your hands, out, in, arch back, out, forward, in, up, out, change your grip, in, arch back, out, forward, in, up, out, hands on the knees. Sufi Grind, 3 times in one direction. Three times in the opposite direction. Okay, good. We're going to do a little Qigong sequence to get a little bit settled. Just follow me. It's quite easy to do this initial sequence. Hands will be in front of the belly button. We're just going to very easily at your own pace. You breathe in, hands expand. You breathe out, hands contract. Very easy. Let's do it 5 times at our own pace. Next motion, you'll breathe in as the hands go up to the shoulder height. You turn them over, hands go down towards the knees as you breathe out at your own pace 5 more times. Next move, your fingertips are going to touch. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in as your fingers and your hands circle up the midline. out as they go down and around. 5 more times at your own pace. And up the midline, out, down, and around. On that 5th time, as you exhale, you're going to make a little triangle in front of your forehead. Then you're going to breathe in as you scoop beside and behind you. And you breathe out as your hands go up to your head height. Once again, that's breathing in as you scoop behind you. Out as they go up to head height. We're going to do that 5 more times at your own pace. The 5th time, we're going to make that same triangle in front of our forehead. We're going to breathe into our hands. As we exhale, we're going to lower that triangle to where the thumbs touch the belly button. The fingers go underneath the belly button. You're going to drop your shoulders. And you're just going to breathe into that triangle 3 times at your own pace. Good. We're going to go ahead and start formal meditation now. So we do have someone who's possibly new on this. So we're just going to sit for 25 minutes and we'll have some question and answer after. Once again, the person that's new, just do the best that you can. Just follow your breath for now. If you have a technique already, use it. We're going to sit for about 25 minutes and then we can have some question and answer, which is a very unique time to get your questions answered. Do you have a timer? I do. Okay, so we're going to sit for 25 minutes. We'll give a little half bow. You can take your hands, you can rub them together, create a little friction. You can use those nice, juicy, energetic hands to put them on your face, your eyes. You can rub them through your hair. You can massage your ears down to the lobes. You can tap out your chest and your traps. Give your belly a nice little rub. You can massage your lower back, extend your legs and massage your legs as need be, and sit comfortably. We're going to have a little question and answer. So everybody is familiar with what question and answer is like now, except for the new person. But question and answer, we normally start with the audience that's live. If they have questions, answer, or homework, something they need to present, we talk about, and then we start to open it up to the Zoom audience. You know, I was reading something before we do that. I was reading something in the news today. I was just talking to Brian and Tracy about it before we started, about how there's a court case that's going to go up against the Supreme Court, where one of the things you'll learn about what we do here is we're not really interested in trying to tell anybody what to think. I don't really want to indoctrinate anybody or make anybody believe any particular thing. What we're really interested in is how can we help people wake up to the reality of what's going on in their true nature? How can we help them abide in that reality? And how can we help them connect with other human beings and be of service? Those are the basic things that we're interested in. This court case is going to be about a person who makes websites, and they basically make websites for religious organizations, and they have a desire not to make websites for people of different sexual orientations. So they don't have any customers of different sexual orientations asking them to make a website yet, but they want to preempt it, and they got some help from different right-leaning groups, and they've already pushed it up to the Supreme Court. And they're trying to put it under freedom of expression challenge, First Amendment challenge. So I was thinking, basically, what would be, let's make some rules, right? If we had to think about what were the rules to life, I think I have 5 rules that might be useful to give us some guidance. And let's see if we can abide by these rules. Number one, I'd like to say maybe the most important rule is my religion is basically love. Let's stick with that. Can we agree to that? Someone said, sorry, don't mean to be rude, but I need to attend. No problem. You got to go. You got to go. We'll see you, Hans. So we believe in love. Rule number 2 is if you have a question, reflect back on rule number 1. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, meditate and wake up. So meditate, people often have preconceived ideas of what that means. We're going to just say meditation is the process of being present. Okay? Be present and wake up. Right? That doesn't really ruffle any feathers, right? Number 4, how about let's abide in awakening? Because we can all be awake at times in our life, but then the pushes and forces of our habits in our life will pull us in directions, right? We can use words like karma to describe that. So abiding in awakening is this continual return to your true self, to where you really rest in that as an anchor, right? And number 5, how about let's be of service in our own unique creative way. So if we were to apply these rules to how we act, and when we're curious and confused about what to do in life, like number 1, can we act with love? Can we agree on that? Number 2, when we have, but what about questions come off, can we first say, well, number 2 says, think about number 1 some more. Okay, did that. So, all right, my questions they got answered. I feel like I know how to act. But then number 3 says, let's meditate. Meditate, we're not going to be controversial. We're not going to say you have to sit under the Bodhi tree and awaken to Buddhist enlightenment. But can we meditate, which means be present, and can we wake up to reality? All right, I can get behind that. That's a good number 3. Number 4, can we abide in this reality? Can we rest in this reality? And then number 5, can we be of service? We're all connected here, human beings, we're all relating to each other. Can we be useful to one another in our own unique, creative way, right? I'm a doctor, that's what I do for a living. Amir is a personal trainer, it's what he does for a living. Everybody does different things, but can you connect with the world and plug in your own unique way? So these are very broad guidelines. They're not exactly Moses coming down from the mountain with 2 tablets, but I think that there is a little bit of guidance and reflection in these basic principles, right? So hopefully that's a little bit useful. I particularly like number 1 and number 2. When in doubt, you can really just stick to one word, just stick to love, right? And that's kind of your true north. That's your compass. That's going to get you through most of the hairy parts of life. If we can just remember to stick to love. So we're going to open it up for question and answer. I want to kind of give Tracy a little shout out. Tracy's going to go for her first meditation retreat this weekend. It's actually in Clearwater at a Zen center there. They're a lovely group, Clearwater Zen Center. Oh, Nikki, if you're interested, you can go too, or if anybody else is in the area. It's a day and a half, I think. Am I correct?
It's all day. It's Friday night, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning.
Okay, it's about 2 days. So Tracy just asked me a few questions. She's only been there once before. She's been meditating with us. We do a little 3-hour or 4-hour retreat once a month, and we just did that last Saturday. So Tracy and I were in the room, and we sat like 40, 45 minutes, and then a 50-minute sit. She could sit through all of them, and she did great. So even on the weekend, they're not going to make you sit for 50 minutes. They do shorter meditation. So you already know that you can accomplish that length of time. And then she asked me a little bit about this and about that. And I just had one little piece of advice for her. I just said, you should just commit. What that means is for that 2 days, basically, all kinds of stuff's going to happen. Probably you're going to have times which is very uncomfortable. Probably you're going to learn about yourself. Probably you're going to have some times that are actually quite comfortable and really liberating. But you're going to go through a roller coaster like we all do in our lives, and it's going to be compressed. And I said, just commit. So this commitment is for that time, I'm going to sit there no matter what. Well, unless you have a heart attack or something, you have some outs, right? If you do have a heart attack, you're allowed to get out. But this commitment is when we do this process, we commit to finding our true selves, basically, right? We commit to saying that we are going to take a stand to really look inward. This commitment is very useful and often necessary because your mind will play tricks on you. It happens to me all the time. I've been very open about saying that half the meditation retreats that I've sat, and I've sat several of different lengths of time, going several months at a time, I've bailed on. Same with plant medicine experiences. We talk about that sometimes because you come in with the heart of suffering or curiosity or whatever it is, the reason that you start. But once you do it, you might get a little pressure taken off at some point. Your questions might get answered, or you might feel like you got a little bit of work done, and then your mind starts to play with you. It's like, you did enough, you can do some more later, or you make excuses trying to find another perfect reason, or you make some other excuse for, I need to do this first before I do that. There's always this excuse to say, why is it not the best perfect time for us? That happens to my patients all the time also. It's always like after the holidays, after my guests leave, after I sell my house, after all the stars align, I will look inward and I will finally do my job. One of the famous quotes of the Buddha is that the problem or one of the difficulties of life is that you think that you have time. We always think that we're going to have this magical stretch of time where everything's going to be organized and we're going to have all our ducks in a row, and our little walk to enlightenment will be a simple skip and a stroll without any mishap, and it'll be beautiful. But our lives are full of twists and turns, as they always are. So when you have an inspiration in your heart, an inspiration for change, whether it be for your body, whether it be to look inward, when that inspiration arises, I say, go, do it. Because that inspiration is often far and fleeting. Too many other things come pressing into life and they drive that inspiration down. I sometimes liken it to this little drum beat we hear in our heart. It thumps and it's very quiet most of the time. It's just mild. It's this little calling for us to look inward. And we all know we need to get there, but we look outward, the things we have to do in life, our commitments, et cetera, et cetera. And this drumbeat can start to get a little bit quiet. But sometimes this drumbeat is stronger and we feel this inspiration grow. When it grows, don't think that you're going to have a better situation later. Just do it. Find the situation that you feel called to. Take advantage of that. Make hay while the sun is shining, because we don't know when the sun is going to come back. We really don't. I remember a few times when I first started meditating and getting some focus, because most of the time we start meditating and we are not used to this process. We just notice how jumbled our mind is. Maybe we get a couple moments of calm and things like that. But I started to get some focus and I was starting to eat clean and I was starting to put a little more time into a regular practice. And then one day I was sitting there and I was just like, wow, I am focused. I am doing this. I was doing my practice. And you hear these stories about when you start to hang out with meditators and stuff, you might hear stories about energetic openings and things like that. And they can be a little bit of a sidebar. People think that they're maybe the point. They're kind of a consequence. They're an effect. If you're practicing, these things will happen. These are not the reason why we practice. They're just an effect of practice. So I was meditating and I started to feel really warm in my belly, and I started to feel this slow creep of energy crawling up my midline, and I was like, whoa, I'm getting it today. And I sat really strong, and it felt so natural and so easy. Like I could just return to this at any time. I was like, oh my God, this is just so easy to do. And then I got distracted. I was like, well, I'm going to get back to this. I'm going to go do this thing and get back to this. It took me months to get back to that, months. Because I got distracted. I did another thing. I didn't meditate at all again that night. I got back to it a couple days later. I just thought it was going to be flame on, boom. I was going to be like that. And it was not. I was jumbled. I was confused. I was full of questioning. I was trying to make this experience happen. I was trying to recapture something. And I got sidebarred. So when you're sitting strong, or if you feel inspired, go do that thing, right? What's the worst that can happen? You commit to 2 days. What's the worst that can happen? Your knees are going to hurt. Your back's going to hurt. You're going to come out the other end thankful for the experience, right? When you're sitting strong and you feel like your practice has some momentum behind it, you're like, wow, okay, I'm sitting strong today. Instead of cutting it at the time, if you have the time, go longer. Go longer, experience what happens, watch the whole process, see what your mind does to you. Does it start to talk to you? Also watch your desire to create an experience. Ooh, I'm really focused today. I want to always be this focused, or I want to feel this energetic sensation, or whatever story that your mind is telling you. But when you're sitting strong, go longer. Let that resistance point, feel where it is, push up against your resistance, okay? Experience that border is porous and it's actually not real. It's just a mental resistance point, okay? And when you're having a very hard time, I can't meditate today sucks. My mind is so jumbled, I'm so antsy. That's why we use a timer. When you choose a specific amount of time, and I often tell people in the beginning, choose a user-friendly amount of time that doesn't make you feel nervous. If you started meditating a week ago and you're like, every day 1 hour, then you could start to get frustrated very easily and get thrown off. Choose an amount of time that's not too frustrating or difficult for you, whatever, 5 minutes. And when you choose 5 minutes, you commit. You do it. Use a timer. You don't have to even look back at it. Do that time. And then watch what happens as you start to unravel and that time relaxes and you can push that time a little bit farther back. And when you have the opportunity, you join groups like this, other people that make you sit in one place a little longer, and it pushes against your resistance point, and you start to experience more and more that resistance is not real, it's fabricated, and you're feeding it with mental and emotional energy. You're creating a straw man. You think it's like a scarecrow. that it's actually going to protect you from something, but it doesn't protect you from anything. It just looks scary, right? In fact, if you jumped on it, it would be light and fluffy and probably a lot of fun, like jumping on leaves when we were kids, right? So that being said, a little shout out to Tracy for her first retreat. That's great. Any questions from the audience? Do you have something or a comment or something you'd like to bring up for homework?
I do actually.
Okay.
So, I just mentioned I'm working hard on my meditation practice. And I have this great spiritual toolbox that if my mind wanders, I can bring it back with whatever my mantra or my breathing that I've been working on. But in the daytime, when I am working or busy, or my mind swirls just out of control. Just goes. I can't even think about, I need to get something out of the toolbox. It's beyond that. I don't even think about it till I get home from work. I'm like, whoa, if I just had something like I just can't get it back. And I don't think about, grabbing the beads or breathing or Qigong, anything. It's just, so I'm kind of out of control with my regular day when I'm not meditating. I just don't know how to get focused back or even recognize that I need to get back to myself.
Okay, let's give her some help. This is a very, very common thing. It's this compartmentalization of spiritual practice and our everyday, what we consider normal life. So everybody here, if you're watching on, Facebook or you're on the Zoom, you have some desire to go inward and experience your true self, whether that language resonates with you or not. You're not sitting there quiet meditating, thinking that it's going to bring you $1 million after 15 minutes, all right? Something is calling you to take this time to try to just be there with yourself, okay? Something is calling you to do that. You might not fully understand that calling. It might be in its infancy, but if you pay attention to it, it will grow. Then we start to get this compartmentalization. We go to places that we deem spiritual that make us feel better, right? I want to go to yoga. I want to go to my sound bath. I'm going to try meditation. I'm going to be around certain people because they make me feel better, et cetera, et cetera. We're chasing a feeling. But then when life gets hectic, oftentimes it's about being around something that's uncomfortable, something that you dislike. So that can assault you. Our mind, our heart, it basically wants more of the things it wants. It wants less of the things it doesn't want, right? I want more pizza. I want more time too. I want less stress about many things, right? So these are things that we want and don't want. One of the real difficulties with life is pace. It's the speed. So why do we meditate cross-legged? And why is it most of the time in a quieter environment? This is meditation 101. It's like kindergarten. We got all the training wheels and everything's out. You're sitting in a seated position that's relatively stable because it gives you some solidity. A strong body that has some firmness in its posture helps and stabilizes the mind and the heart. So we have that. And you're sitting here breathing, and you're doing your object of meditation, and you're watching things as they come. And your mind can be very jumbled, but eventually it will slow down. You'll start to see it one by one. And then as you start to see it one by one, it's easier to work with. Oh, okay, mind's thinking. I can let that go. I can return to my practice. You can start to do that. But when you're in a work day, like Tracy works for me, and there's somebody calling, there's somebody coming up to the front desk, there's somebody like needing her, there's 3 different things that she needs to do at one time. And it's like an assault. And the pace, it's too fast. So the more you abide in your true nature, if you were to just wake up and have a big realization, wow, I saw the truth. But then you go out to a busy place like rush hour traffic on US 19 where we are, US 1 where Amir is, and the cars are all there and you're swerving in and out, then all of a sudden the intensity of that experience overpowers this temporary opening that you had. You don't know how to let yourself abide in this spaciousness, in this awakening experience, and you don't know how to use your inner resources at the same time. So it's too much. So when you practice and this space starts to open up and it opens up, and then you start to rest in that space more and more, you'll be able to kind of see things as they come. You ever see those like the Matrix movies or any movie where a person suddenly has focus and they see the punch coming, right? You have the movie where there's somebody who's scared of fighting and the other person comes at them and they're like, oh God. And then for some reason they stop being scared. And then all of a sudden the person throws the punch and they see it. They're like, what is this? They just see it and then they just kind of turn and let it pass and they're amazed by themselves. They're like, whoa, how did I see that? And then they throw another punch and they're like, whoa, where's this block coming from? Now I'm actually going to punch this guy back, and they punch him and the guy flies back and you're like, what just happened to me? Right? It's like Spider-Man when he first kind of uses his powers and fights bullies at school. It's like, what the hell just happened? Well, your awareness got turned on. You stopped being overwhelmed. You stopped listening to all this internal dialogue and you just became really present, and time can slow down. And when it does, you're just able to see what's going on more clearly. So the pace of people coming up, they'll bother you a little bit less. Right now, the pace is too much. So the strength of your practice, you can see with how much you can handle what's going on in your life. So pacing can be an issue, but let's make her and give her a little bit more help, because Tracy has a lot of tools. What that means is she's been doing this with me probably 1.5 years. So she knows how to do Qigong. She can meditate for an hour now. She can do these things, but she says, I don't remember to grab the tools from my spiritual toolbox. How can I remember to do that? Okay. So Tracy, you have a mala, right? We gave you that necklace. So Atomic Habits is a book I sometimes refer to, and that's by James Clear. And he basically just talks about the cause and effect nature of our habits. And there's actually a lot of kind of very simple and clear things to work with there. He talks about what's called CCRR. So CCRR, let's go through what that means again. It's craving. What's number 2?
I'm drawing a blank as well.
Okay. R is response and reward. So you have Q, craving, response, and reward. So it's a very simple experience of cause and effect. Q means something triggers, right? You see something, you hear something, you smell something, right? If I smell pizza, that's a cue. Then, because I smelled pizza, I have a craving, all right? Then I can respond. My response is either to eat or not to eat pizza. I will get a reward one way or the other, right? Then the other R is reward. I will either get the experience of what pizza does for me, or I will not eat 400 calories in one slice and I'll get the experience of not having that in me, right? So CCRR. So it just talks about the cause and effect nature of life. And when you're starting to work with habits, when your practice isn't firm, sometimes we need to set up some structure. And what will happen is that habit will start to become more second nature. Right now, your mind, when you sit here, you can do it. You're like, okay, things come, difficult things come sometimes, but I can let it go and I can return. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. But then when other things come and you're not in this environment, feel assaulted and you can't quite do that. Am I correct? Yeah. So her practice has some weakness there. She just needs more time to settle in and bite into this. So CCRR, you have a mala, you have prayer beads. The first step is to just touch them. You just touch them throughout the day. And what they do is they remind you, oh, what are these for? These are a tool to help me be present. Okay? So what I would tell you to do is your first step is to just start to touch them. Just touch them. Then, if you're busy, but you don't have, if you have one hand free, you can literally take it off and you can spin it while you're doing something. Most of the time, you don't have one hand free because people are calling and you're writing stuff down. But if you're talking to a patient and they're agitated and it's a difficult conversation, you can actually take it off and flip it as they're talking to you. And that will soak up some anxiety and mental juice. And you can do one extra step. You can do your practice, your mantra. You can do it with the flipping of the mala. But the first step for you is the C. The Q is right now, let's just work on this. Just practice this C. The Q is just to touch it. You don't have to touch it for a long time, but just touch it throughout the day. And every time you touch it, you're going to say, oh, it's bringing me back to the present. I have all of these tools that I know. I know how to breathe. I know how to do my mantra. I know how to do Qigong. All of these things I know, but I forget to use them because I'm assaulted with the pace of life. Just touch it. So your homework tomorrow, because you're going to work tomorrow, is I want you to start touching it just throughout the day. Okay? In fact, if you want, you can do an extra cue. Why don't you write this on your hand? It might look weird. I don't know. This might not be a great recommendation. I'm going to have you write touch me. So you'll be doing things throughout the day and you'll just see your hand like, what do I write? Touch me? What am I touching? Oh, the mala. Okay. You're just going to write touch me. And that's going to remind you, or touch, or something that may be less provocative. And yeah, less provocative, because patients might read your hand and take you up on that. And then you can just touch the mala. Okay. So start with that. I used prayer beads, oh gosh, like 7 years religiously. And I needed them because I was in a big city, 4.5 million people. Riding the subway was a horror show. These things drove me nuts. It was always loud. And I was touching that mala all the time, flipping it, and it gave me some grounding, and I hooked it with my practice. I got just a very simple one made of cedar, had such a beautiful smell, and it only cost me $1. And it lasted a couple years. And the color, it was very mild at the time. It's a light tan. And then the more you touch it, it becomes dark because of the oils in your hand. It becomes very beautiful. And after it broke, it was like 2 years into it, I was doing it and it broke and shattered and spilled all over the subway floor. Oh man, I was sad. I got really attached to it. I was like, oh my God, this became like my little Linus blanket. And then I learned that I could be okay without it, that it was a tool. It wasn't a requirement. And I never found another mala that I liked as much as that one, I'd have to say. They had like 2 years of chi and love in that one. So whomever slipped and fell on that from the subway, they slipped and fell on a bit of good mojo. So work with that. Okay. Brian, do you have anything you need to bring up today?
Well, I don't formally sit as much as I used to for since the last 3 months after the baby was born. However, I have been just making sure that I'm observing throughout the day. So whether it's mantra, Kwanzaa, and Bolsai, all day long, just in the back of my mind, and even as you're talking or as I'm processing through things. And what that helps me do is just when other thoughts do kind of come in, I notice that I stop my mantra. So then it makes me pay attention to what the thoughts are. So then I'll listen to the thoughts and process the thoughts and then go through and then just start back the mantra again. So it's just in the background running all day long. And it's super helpful. I find that it's in my sleep as well, especially as I'm trying to process things or thinking I need to hold on to ideas and thoughts from the previous day. Then it's just completely consistently running. So yeah, that's my experience right now, is always observing thoughts.
Good. So this practice of observation is primary. And you see, when you start to do your practice, and it can be not compartmentalized, where I can do my practice when I'm sitting, where you can bring it into your everyday life, whether it's mantra or counting breaths or koan practice. Koan practice is sometimes a little more difficult to do moment to moment because it's a questioning practice and it takes some mental energy, but you can bring it up from time to time. You just start to practice. Anytime you start to get too caught up in something, you just ask yourself, who is doing this thing? You just start to ask yourself, and it's like hitting the brakes on your mind. All of a sudden your mind goes, what? And you can take some time to really be more present. So you start to notice it. It'll happen in your sleep. Yep, it's like learning a second language. You know when you're getting good at a second language is when you dream in that language. Right? So your practice starts to come up in your sleep. It'll sometimes help you with difficult dreams. If you have scary dreams or anxious dreams, you'll find yourself just kind of using your practice, right? And in the beginning, that can be kind of like a shield, like you want to protect yourself from a difficult experience. But as you become stronger, this shield, you'll not need it as much, and you'll let the experience in your practice, because when you do your practice, like a mantra or something, there is pace, how quickly you say it. There is volume, how loudly you say it. And there's also foreground and background, whether it's the object of meditation or whether it's just lightly in the background as other things go on. So when difficult experiences happen in real life or in a dream, which really there isn't much of a difference, you'll notice when you're trying to protect yourself, when it's like Captain America's shield, you're blocking it and you're saying it with volume and pace, and it's in the foreground. And then as you get stronger, it'll relax a little bit. It can still be there, and it can soak up mental anxiety, but you can let the experience be more what it is. Start to realize that the boogeyman's not going to eat you. Becomes a little slower, less volume, more in the background as the experience starts to become a little bit more present for you, right? You can notice these things. I'll give you one little piece of homework, Brian.
Yes.
I want you to write, probably in as many places as you deem viable. For a cue for you, I want you to write the word deeply. And I'm going to tell you why. So I became a father, and I remember having a child. It's very stressful. It's a very hard first year, especially you've had a couple children, but it's my first one. It's like, holy mackerel, it's an adjustment, right? A lot to adjust to. You don't have time, you have different priorities. But what you can always do is you can do everything more deeply. What does that mean? When you see deeply. When you smell deeply. When you taste, when you touch, when you listen, when you think, do it with a deep intention. What that means is, don't just hold your baby, because you're going to hold that baby one way or the other. You got to burp it, right? But as you're holding it, why don't you hold it deeply? Be present for it. That is no different than sitting here and doing formal meditation. It's no different. The only thing is your awareness is fully here, as opposed to doing this and being anxious and thinking of your next thing. Do it deeply. Everybody, when you're anxious and you have someone in front of you and you're talking to them, just the stress of having someone in front of you can be difficult, whether you love them or not. When it's anxious and difficult for you, take a second, pause, and look at them deeply. Hear them deeply. When your mind is really anxious and you can't settle down, take a second. A very easy way is when you walk, because walking engages your physical body. Walk with more presence. Walk deeply. Feel your feet as it touches the ground. Feel it. Walk deeply. That was one of Thich Nhat Hanh, who died recently. One of his more famous things that he did was he really used a lot of walking meditation. Walking meditation is particularly strong in certain traditions. For example, Israel, yes, she does a Vipassana practice, very strong in Vipassana. Vipassana is like 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting. It's alternated. Walk deeply. It's very user-friendly, right? Take a second and do things with more depth.
Right. That being said, we, Sonny and I, this morning, after I fed him, I took him outside and I walked around in the grass barefoot for about 45 minutes. And then as we listened to the birds, I try to repeat back some of the birds to him. Mm-hmm. So it was, he's curious. So I'm trying to be curious of him as well, and going back and reciting the sounds that we hear and not really trying to call the names of these things, just listening to the sounds. Mm-hmm. And then recently making sure that when specifically my children ask me questions, sometimes if I'm busy, you answer it without looking up. You just answer the question and they go away. But making sure that I take the time to stop and look them in the face and give them an answer has been a transitional point for me as well. within the last, few months or so. Just making sure I stop what I'm doing, paying attention enough to stop, look them in their face and just give them an answer so they know that I've heard them. So deeply is a good task right now.
Yeah, so if you need reminders, you can just write it. I would just write it everywhere. Put it on the mirror in a corner, put it in the corner of your notebook, put it on the bottle that you're feeding your son with, just kind of little reminders. And when she asks, why are you writing deeply everywhere? So it just helps me live and appreciate the moment deeply. I want to look deeply. All of our six senses. I want to look deeply, hear deeply, smell, taste, touch, think deeply. Okay? Bring yourself back to the moment. Anyone out there on Zoom have a question or something that's going on in their life they'd like to bring up? Okay, so we have Israel and Amir so far. So I'm going to start with Israel and then I'm going to get to Amir. Israel, you want to unmic yourself? What's going on with yourself? It's been a little bit.
Oh, I'm doing very well. So I wanted to say two things quickly. I have a tip for Tracy that I wanted to share.
Okay.
So I get so much out of meditation, more so than sitting with plant medicines.
Mhm.
And I've had difficult but profound insights into my mind and emotional state through meditation. And I just wanted to tell her to be infinitely and endlessly patient as you persist through your retreat. Just be patient, and it is okay. There were times when I felt like, I love going to Vipassana retreats, and it would be the fifth day. That's like 40 plus hours of meditation. And I cannot get my mind to focus for a second with the practice. A second, I mean, not even a fraction of a second. But I learned so much through that because I got to a point where, heck, fine, I'll just witness whatever this crazy stuff is happening. And the minute I became patient with myself, it became so easy. And I don't think I would have gotten as much without the patience. So just be endlessly patient with yourself, endlessly, like you would be with a child. And you'll have a great time. I also wanted to share, Dr. Jean, I think a year or so ago, I shared with you that I was struggling with schoolwork, that I felt like I was stuck. I just couldn't get anything done. And a homework you gave me was to create a setting. Just make a cup of tea, open the computers, sit at the desk and see what happens. And I used that through the past year or so up until this point. And I just want to tell you that I am about to graduate this semester. And I credit all the wisdom that you give us week after week to get me through that and learn so much in the process. So I just want to say I'm grateful to you and for everybody else here. So I'll stop there.
Wow, those are very beautiful words for both Tracy and myself. Thank you so much, Israel. That was a wonderful expression from your true heart. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's amazing the amount of, we'll use the word development for lack of a better word, development that we can have with just little efforts of persistence and a little bit of help when we start to be around other people that are trying, other people that are interested in this process of life in this way. How can I have this inward journey merge with the exterior experience of life? How can I truly come into my true humanity? When people are interested and you start to talk to these kinds of people and be around these kinds of people, life just starts to open up. When you do things alone, it's not that you can't do things, it's just hard, there's just too many distractions and we get down on ourselves. There's a special word for Buddhas who self-awaken. They're called Pratyekaya Buddhas. So they are working through their process of life and they woke up and they attained enlightenment. And they're like, wow, I attained enlightenment. But they don't know how they got there. So when somebody else comes up to them and they're like, oh my goodness, something's changed about you. How did you get to where you are? They're like, I don't know. They just got there by circumstance, working their things out through their life. And you can, of course, definitely awaken without exterior influences. It's just about being sincere and open to life and having some persistence and patience. But it's a lot more fun. It's a lot faster. And it's full of less unnecessary suffering when we do it together, right? Let's just enjoy it together and create some community around the experience. This is one of the things that I truly appreciate about the Zen experience, is that Zen is particularly good at group practice. A lot of spiritual traditions, they don't have strong group practice. They have a lot of solo practice where you have some guidance from a teacher and then you kind of go off and do your thing. But Zen is really good at this idea of together action, is what Sensenin used to call it, together action. And to tell one quick story, he talks about all of us cleaning our karma together in the potato cleaner. So especially when you go on retreat, it's like a pressure cooker. You're around all these people in tight quarters and, nobody's bothering each other, but it's amazing the little stories your mind will play with you if you sit quietly with a few people for a few days. All of a sudden, little things about people bother you that are ridiculous, like whatever, the way they sit, the way they smell, the way they look, whatever. It starts to become a thing. Or the food. Oh my God, everybody will complain about the food, the things you want to eat that you can't. Of course, physical difficulties in your body, or the romances you'll play off in your head. Before you know it, you're looking around and you're playing matchmaker. You think, who among these people are going to be my soulmate? They're very spiritual people and I want a spiritual union. And we create all this drama in our head. It's amazing. These are common things that people think about and have to go through. So when you're in this pressure cooker of an environment, you're basically sitting there and you have to deal with it. You don't have the out of the walking away and distracting yourself with something. So if you were to take a potato, you could clean that potato by itself. You just take a rag or water, and you could just clean the potato. You wipe it till it's clean, okay? So in Korea, in old school Korea, they used to have this potato cleaner. It's a big jar, like a bucket, like a barrel. And they put a bunch of potatoes in water and they put a stick in there and they'd stir it around. And the potatoes would bump into each other, cleaning each other off. So through this group together action, we are cleaning each other's karma. If you really think you got it all together and you don't need help, that's not true. You just haven't met the right people that are going to bring out things in yourself that are unpleasant. Everything's groovy when you're in a groovy situation, right? Put yourself in a situation that tests your real ability to be present and to have patience and to have compassion. We can all be the yogi on the mountaintop if we practice long and hard enough, but can you be the yogi in the middle of the Mardi Gras parade? I say that because Mardi Gras is coming next weekend here in Dunedin, and Tracy almost bailed on her retreat so she could go to Mardi Gras, but she's got commitment, she's going, right? So this group practice, which is particularly emphasized in Zen. I personally have a strong affinity for it, and I've seen countless times the benefit of it, right? We all help each other. We all awaken together, right? An expression that they used to use in one of the retreats I went to called One Heart, that's a great group, plant medicine group. They said that your healing is my healing. My healing is your healing. We heal together. Okay, so those are beautiful words. Thank you, Israel. That's very touching. Amir, you had some questions. Would you like to unmute mic yourself?
Yes, hi, Dr. June.
Hey, Amir.
I have one of my stepkids. He's usually pretty rude to the babysitter and the mother. It seems like he has issues with the female authority. And a lot of times I approach him with a compassionate way, and I talk to him and tell him, we love you, but you can't act this way. And that usually doesn't work. So I have to be a little bit tougher on him, yell at him, scream at him, put him in his room. And right now he's being punished in his room all week. He's 9.5 years old. And when I do that, when I have to reprimand him, I feel horrible energy within me, like my stomach and my heart center. It feels really bad, but I also feel like I need to do this because I need to teach him something. So I'm kind of in a mixed feeling here. Like I need to represent him and have a little bit more masculine toughness with him, but that also makes me feel bad. So, I don't know if you have any comments about that.
I do. I remember a story about Sunshine City was kind of the founder of the Quantum School of Zen, which I spent some time with, and I have a lot of respect for his teachings in his school. And people, we had this preconceived notions of the Zen master, right? Always calm and always gotten it together and groovy and with it. And there was this kid who ran up to Sunshine City when he was screaming, and Sunshine City ran back at him screaming, doing martial arts moves. Scared the kid. And then one of the I guess he was a monk, but a disciple, he came up, he's like, Sinim just means reverend monk. He's like, what are you doing? And he said, demons only understand demon language. So when you can say all the soft, nice words in the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to penetrate some people where they are. So you need to respond to a person where they are with something that they can understand, and then maybe elevate a little bit. If you elevate too much, you tell a 9-year-old kid he needs to be Gandhi and he needs to basically take beatings in the name of freedom and not eat, he's not going to do it. So you meet him where he is. Things like anger are not bad, by the way. Anger is just an energy. Anger can be used to help you through a difficult situation. It gives you energy. Anger can be something to use seriousness, to create seriousness in a situation. Anger could be used to get somebody's attention. All energies are not good or bad. What about sexual energy? Is that bad? It can be when it's perverted, or we overuse it, or we dominate with it. But is there anything particularly bad about it? No. It's a lovely, intimate expression, maybe the most intimate expression of love, right? In a very physical way in creation. So same with anger, same with any of the emotions. None of them are bad, right? They're just an arising, and they can all be used as tools. So a child is the ability. You ever watch like lions or animals in the Amazon or in the jungle? When when a little cub is jumping on the mommy, and the mommy's like letting him do it for a while. And then the mommy eventually gets angry and goes, "Rawr," and smacks it. And the kid's like, whoa, what was that? Right? But then the kid learns very quickly that it can only do a certain amount before it's going to get a punishment. Right? Children are really not that different from animals. What that means is they're instinctual. They just go with their desires. They just want and don't want. And they don't really care about consequences. They don't really understand the cause and effect nature of life. And that happens for a lot of years, right? When you're in your 20s and someone's like, oh, this is going to catch up to you, we don't really experience that in our bodies and in our hearts. We think we have infinite time, right? Like, nah, it's fine. And then eventually we have a problem. We're not mature. We haven't accepted responsibility. And honestly, that process of being an animal, which is instinctual living without wisdom, for many people, many human beings, it lasts their whole life. I would say the majority of human beings, it lasts their whole life. They don't get to that point where they awaken to the cause and effect nature of life. They don't accept that responsibility. So you can correct your child. I know it makes you feel crappy because you want to be a loving dad. It's this feeling that arises. You used anger, or you gave into anger probably. You didn't really use it as a tool. It became so much where you couldn't help it and you lashed out. Okay? But what is this three-step process of meditation? First, you observe what happens, you let it go, and you return to the present. So when you have to discipline your child, the situation arises, you got angry, you got to practice that next step, letting it go, a little forgiveness for yourself, a little forgiveness for him. Return to the present with as clear a mind and as clear a heart as you can, so you can see the scene and you can react appropriately. You have correct observation of the situation, and then you can have correct action. So, one, it's not bad to discipline a child. These aren't bad things. It's not bad to feel any emotion that you have, whether it be angry or regret or guilt for the way that you acted. None of those things are bad. You just acknowledge, oh, this is what I'm experiencing. I acknowledge it. Let's not run from it. This is the thing that's the uncomfortable step. This is the thing that's a very important lesson. When these uncomfortable things arise, we immediately have a rationalization. And then we try to suppress or change it because we don't want to experience it as it is, because it's too painful. If it comes up, ugh, I yelled at my kid, I must be a shitty person. You don't want to experience how this makes you feel. And that's not a slam on anybody. Nobody wants to experience it. We run from this unpleasantness all the time. But the more we do this practice of being here, everything that arises, we start to be able to see a little bit more as it is. What is the truth? It is as it is. You see it as it is. You feel the energy of as it is, whether it's fun and pleasant or whether it's unpleasant. This is where a lot of people stop their meditation practice when they start to experience unpleasant things. And they're like, I don't like things as they are. I came into meditation so I could just feel good. What I was chasing was a good feeling, right? So do your discipline, forgive yourself, let it go, let it go. And you'll see the situation more clearly with time. You'll see it and you'll start to react better. It's often the pace, just like I was telling Tracy, when the office, the phone is ringing and somebody's coming up, the pace can be really hard to deal with. And you just get better at it because presence and awareness, the deeper we start to sit in the now, it starts to open up to where we don't need as much. Right now, when your practice is more fledgling, you need to recharge. It's like you got to plug your battery in. You're like, holy mackerel, day was tough. I need to just decompress. You got to plug in your battery. Your battery starts to fill up. And then when you have difficult situations, you're using this spiritual energy that you've topped off to handle things. But later, when you're used to being more settled, the pace bothers you less. You can handle it more. Doesn't mean you're going to like it. Doesn't mean you're always going to be able to be centered no matter how difficult the situation is. But you start to notice you have more stamina for it. When I first started working here, I was really busy. I was seeing a lot of people, over 100 people a week. I'm doing everything. I'm really busy. And in the beginning, the pace got to me. It's like, oh God, I'd go home and I'd be wiped. My mind would be physically tired and my body would be tired. And then I just started to get used to it. And I stopped attaching to needing to feel calm all the time. It's like, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to let that go. Then I just go to one patient to the next and I could just handle things much easier. I used to see when I was a student in school, this senior practitioner, we always had so much respect for our senior practitioners. We're like, oh my God, they know so much. We were so young and it was just so amazing for us, right? There's this adulation that happens when you're new. And I would watch this practitioner, they'd take a big breath, they'd do a little move, then they'd open the door and they would be collected and calm. And I was like, that's a good trick. I need to do that. Take a second to center before I go in there so I can be present with my patient. And I used to do that. I'd be like, and then I'd do it. Then I asked a senior practitioner, one of my mentors, he'd been doing it 25 years. And I would say, it's like, his name is Chip. I was like, Chip, you never need to really gather yourself between patients. He's like, yeah, I used to do that in the beginning. I take some time to really center myself in between patients, but now I can kind of turn it off and on, right? You just kind of get in there. You're like, you're in patient mode and you can turn it off and on. Your nervous system starts to experience what does it feel like to do this or to do that. So it's good to check in with your body. Amir, you're a physical guy. You do a lot of physical things with your body. So when you're agitated and you're talking to your son, it's all coming out like this, right? You got to punish. You have to do your thing. And then your energy is it's all jangly energy and it's uncomfortable. So check in with it. What's it making me feel like? All right. So let it go out a little bit. Let the momentum of it spill out. Right? So like Qigong is really good for quickly kind of calming that energy down. You can just do this to kind of calm it down, right? This is a good thing for bringing our energy and awareness down. You just kind of breathe it in and breathe it out. A little simple thing that I like to do is I have some agua de Florida in my office. I just, it's flower water. I just put a little bit on my wrist and I just kind of put it in front of my nose and I just blow it out. I'm feeling uncomfortable or I got too much whatever going on. I was like, then I move on to my next thing. You can build these little rituals into your life. Ritual is like the setting, it's the container until our practice gets strong. You're a good person, Amir. You work hard. You're a good dad. Your kid is not appreciative of it now because he's 9. And when he's 39, he still might not be appreciative of it. You know when he's going to be appreciative? When he has a kid. Whoa, that's when there's an amazing thing that happens when kids have kids. For a small window, there's this tremendous gratitude to their parents. There's like, oh my God, I had no idea how hard this was. It's like you kind of meet right before you pass each other again. You have this little window. And that's why when you have inspiration, right? You capitalize on it. When you feel that in your heart, say the words. Call your mommy and daddy up randomly out of the blue and just say, I love you. I just had to reflect on how difficult you had it. Even if they're shitty to you, they have beat you, they abused you. At some point in their life, they looked at you with kind eyes and felt love. It happened. For sure it happened. At some point they did. At some point they held you. At some point they fed you, right? You feel inspiration, you just call them. And you just say the words. Say, I love you, say what's in your heart, even if you sound goofy and choked up and they think you're on drugs. You just say the words, you'll feel better after. And if your relationship is a wreck and it never gets good, at least in your heart, you can be clean with yourself. You can say, I did the things, I said the things, I tried my best. There's no more I can think of to do to repair this relationship. You do that.
I have an addition to that. In addition, for Amir, my nephews, my sister has 3 boys, and they do all the time challenge female authority, all the time. And their dad's not there completely. He's there as much as he can be. So when I'm there with them, obviously they're not my children. I don't punish them the same way or discipline them the same way their mother does. But when I'm in the room with her and she's continuously asking them to do things, asking them to do things, asking them to do things, and they're ignoring her, then I show up. And every time I show up, I don't have to yell at them anymore, but I show up with this present that's like, your mother's been calling you. At this point, you need to take some action. You at least need to get up off your butt and go acknowledge what she's asking you to do. And I found that just having that presence of being a bigger person and just walking into that space with them and pressing up against them a little bit helps even out some of the energy that they may give back to their mother. And then the second thing I do with my daughter really is I find her patterns. She doesn't like to clean her room, but she likes to hang out with her friends all the time. So if her room's not clean, then the answer is already no, and I don't have to punish her ever. So anytime she asks me if she can go out and hang out with her friends, I'm like, how's your room look? And she's like, well, never mind. So, so finding things that they almost kind of torture themselves a little bit, and they almost kind of punish themselves a little bit when they have things that they can press up against. So I used to be in that yelling phase as well with my children, and it just didn't really work over time because I felt the same way. I felt like shit afterwards. And then what I started to do is just show up in this way that wasn't going to move out of the way until they did what they needed to do. And I found myself yelling less at them.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you, Brian.
I like those basic rules. If your room's not clean, the answer is no. Whatever your question.
I never have to answer anymore. I never have to say, no.
I'm going to borrow that. I like it very much.
Dr. Jean, I wanted to ask about the clear water meditation. Is that every weekend?
No, they do meditate every weekend. So they have it every Saturday, but they do a weekend retreat several times a year. So if you're ever interested, you're welcome to come up. You can get on their mailing list. Just look up Clearwater Zen Center. You can get on their email list. It'd be wonderful to see you live. And they do it. The Roshi, the Zen master, he's not going to be down this particular time, but he does come down often, multiple times a year. I have had conversations with him. I do respect him, and I think that he's a good teacher from what I know.
Is this close to your facility?
It's very close.
Maybe I'll take a trip and see you and maybe plan something.
You should. That would be amazing. You should definitely do that. All right, great.
Thank you.
We're going to have a little chanting and wrap up. What's the time?
8:37.
All right. We're going to do a little chanting to wrap up everybody with the little Guan symbol sign. Symbol sign, 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 symbol sign. Symbol sign, 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 symbol sign. Symbol sign, symbol sign, symbol sign, symbol sign, symbol sign, symbol. We'll go ahead and close. May all beings heal.
May all beings heal.
May all beings awaken.
May all beings awaken.
May all beings abide in awakening.
May all beings abide in awakening.
Shimmy Pop.